A rich man found a lost girl in the woods and took her to his disabled mother's house. When he returned home and entered without knocking, he was shocked by the scene he saw. This is a touching story. In the heart of a dense and mysterious forest, a wealthy man named Henry strolled with his troubled thoughts. Despite his life being full of luxuries and comforts, it lacked something he couldn't identify. Deep down, he felt an emptiness that none of his riches could fill. During his walk, Henry heard a faint cry that made him stop. Intrigued, he followed the sound until he found a little girl, about 7 years old, sitting at the base of a tree. She was dirty, her hair tangled, and her eyes filled with tears. She looked lost and scared. "What happened, sweetheart?" Henry asked, kneeling beside her. The girl sobbed before answering. "I got lost. I can't find my way home." Henry felt a pang in his heart. He couldn't just leave her there. He took her in his arms and said softly, "Don't worry, I'll take you to a safe place." Henry decided to take the girl to his mother's house, a kind and strong woman who had become physically disabled after an accident. She lived in a small cabin in the woods, far from the grandeur of Henry's mansion. When they arrived at the cabin, Henry's mother, Mrs. Smith, was surprised to see her son with the girl in his arms. "Henry, what happened? Who is this child?" "I found her lost in the woods, Mom. I thought we could take care of her until we find her family." Mrs. Smith, despite her limitations, always had a welcoming smile on her face. She extended her hand to the girl and said, "Come here, sweetheart. We'll give you a bath and something to eat." The girl, still scared, took the lady's hand and was led inside the cabin. Henry watched the scene with a mix of emotions. He felt relieved to have found the girl, but something in her sad eyes deeply disturbed him. He knew there was more to this story than she was willing to reveal. Henry couldn't stop thinking about the girl. Something in her expression, in the way she cowered in fear, moved him deeply. He decided he would need to return to the cabin the next day to see how she was doing, and perhaps get more information about her identity. The next morning, Henry returned to his mother's cabin. Upon entering, he found Mrs. Smith and the girl sitting at the table laughing and talking. The girl looked much better. She was clean, well-dressed, and had a shy smile on her face. "Good morning, Henry," greeted Mrs. Smith. "She's feeling much better. We found out her name is Anna." Henry felt a wave of relief seeing Anna more at ease. "Anna, how are you feeling today?" he asked. "Better, sir. Thank you so much for helping me," Anna replied in a soft voice still laden with insecurity. Mrs. Smith gave Henry a look he knew well. It was the look of someone who wanted to have a serious conversation. "Henry, we need to talk about what we'll do with Anna," she said. Henry nodded and followed his mother outside the cabin. Outside, Mrs. Smith continued, "She can't remember where she lives or who her parents are. Maybe you should take Anna to town to see if anyone recognizes her." Henry agreed. They couldn't keep the girl there indefinitely. However, he couldn't stop worrying about Anna's well-being. The next day, Henry and Anna went to town. Henry took her to several places, asking if anyone recognized her, but without success. He felt frustrated, but he wouldn't give up so easily. During the return to the cabin, Anna started crying again. "What's wrong, Anna?" Henry asked, concerned. "I don't want to go back home," Anna confessed between sobs. Henry was surprised. Why wouldn't a child want to go back home? He decided he would need to find out more about Anna's past. Something was very wrong, and he was determined to solve this mystery no matter the cost. Days passed, and Henry couldn't find any clues about Anna's family. He visited the town several times, talked to local authorities, but it seemed no one knew the girl. Meanwhile, Anna grew accustomed to life in the cabin, showing herself to be a sweet and intelligent child. One afternoon, while Anna was playing in the garden, Mrs. Smith called Henry for a serious conversation. "Henry, we can't keep Anna here indefinitely. We need to resolve this situation," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "I know, Mom. But every time I try to take her back to town, she gets desperate. Something very bad must have happened to her." Mrs. Smith sighed, thoughtful. "Maybe we should talk to someone who can help. A psychologist, perhaps." Henry agreed. He scheduled an appointment with a renowned child psychologist in the neighboring town. On the day of the appointment, Anna was visibly nervous, but Henry reassured her. "Everything will be okay, Anna. We're going to find out how to help you." At the office, Dr. Richardson, A middle-aged man with a calm and welcoming expression greeted them with a smile. "So, this is Anna," he said, crouching to be at the girl's level. "How are you, sweetheart?" Anna just nodded, shy. "We're going to ask some questions and talk a bit, okay?" The doctor continued. The session was long. Dr. Richardson asked many questions and used playful methods to try to understand better what was going on in Anna's mind. Henry watched everything attentively, hoping for some answers. At the end of the appointment, Dr. Richardson called Henry for a private conversation. "Henry, Anna has gone through something traumatic. She is blocking out painful memories. With time and the right help, she can start to remember. But for now, it's important to provide a safe and loving environment for her." Henry felt a mix of relief and concern. He knew the path to helping Anna would be long, but he was determined to move forward. They returned to the cabin, and he explained the situation to Mrs. Smith. "We need to be patient and give Anna all the love and support she needs," Henry concluded. Mrs. Smith nodded, her eyes shining with the same determination as her son's. They were united in this mission, ready to face the challenges that would come. Anna deserved a chance to be happy and discover her true story, and Henry would do everything possible to make that happen. As the weeks went by, Anna began to open up more to Henry and Mrs. Smith. She felt safe in the cabin, and her confidence grew every day. Henry continued taking her to the sessions with Dr. Richardson, who slowly helped Anna explore her repressed memories. One afternoon, while Anna was playing in the garden, she had a memory flash that made her stop suddenly. Henry, who was nearby, noticed and ran to her. "Anna, what happened?" he asked, concerned. Anna looked confused and a little scared. I remembered something," she said, her voice trembling. "I remembered a big house with a beautiful garden, and there was a woman. I think she was my mom." Henry felt a mix of hope and apprehension. This was the first time Anna remembered something concrete about her past. He immediately scheduled an appointment with Dr. Richardson to discuss this new information. At the office, Anna described the memory in more detail. Dr. Richardson listened attentively and took notes. "This is a good sign, Anna. It means you're starting to recover your memories," he said, smiling. "We'll keep working on this, and soon you'll be able to remember more things." After the session, Henry and Anna returned to the cabin. During dinner, Anna seemed more thoughtful than usual. "What are you thinking about, Anna?" Mrs. Smith asked in her gentle voice. "I'm trying to remember more about my mom. She was pretty and had a sweet voice. But I also remember being scared. I don't know why," Anna replied, her eyes full of uncertainty. Henry felt a tightness in his chest. It was clear that Anna's memories were starting to return, but with them came feelings of fear and sadness. He knew he would need to be patient and careful. That night, while Anna slept, Henry and Mrs. Smith talked at length about what they could do to help Anna remember her past without causing more pain. "Maybe we should look for more information about missing families in the area," Mrs. Smith suggested. "There might be some record that can help us." Henry agreed. He decided he would start investigating archives and talking to local authorities again. He was determined to discover the truth about Anna, even if it meant facing painful secrets. The next morning, Henry began his investigation in local archives. He spent hours combing through records of missing persons, hoping to find some clue about Anna. The task was exhausting, but Henry was determined. After several weeks of fruitless searching, Henry had an idea. He decided to hire a private detective, someone experienced in finding missing persons. He contacted a renowned detective in the city, named Michael, and explained the situation. "Mr. Henry, I'll do my best to find information about Anna's family. I'll need all the details you've gathered so far," Michael said with a serious expression. Henry handed over all the records he had collected and told him about Anna's fragmented memories. Michael listened attentively and began working immediately. Meanwhile, Anna continued attending her sessions with Dr. Richardson. The memories continued to surface slowly, but each new memory seemed to bring more questions than answers. Henry and Mrs. Smith continued providing a safe and loving environment for Anna, trying to protect her from the possible traumas of the past. One night, after a long day of playing in the garden, Anna approached Henry and Mrs. Smith with a serious look on her face. "I remembered something else," she said hesitantly. "I remembered a man. He was always angry, and I was very scared of him." Henry and Mrs. Smith exchanged worried looks. Who could this man be? And why was Anna so afraid of him? "Do you remember anything else about this man, Anna?" Henry asked, trying not to pressure her. Anna shook her head, looking confused. "No, I only remember the fear." Henry knew they would need to explore this new information carefully. The next day, during the session with Dr. Richardson, Anna talked about the mysterious man. Dr. Richardson took detailed notes and decided it was time to delve a little deeper into Anna's memories. "Anna, let's do a relaxation exercise. I want you to close your eyes and focus on your memories. Tell me everything that comes to your mind," Dr. Richardson said with his calm and reassuring voice. Anna closed her eyes and began to speak. The words came out slowly but with astonishing clarity. "I was in a dark room. The man was yelling at me, saying I had done something wrong. But I didn't know what it was. I only remember being scared and wanting to escape." Henry, who was watching the session, felt a wave of anger and sadness. Who could have done this to an innocent child? He knew they needed to discover the identity of this man and understand what had happened to Anna. As Henry wrestled with his own emotions, Michael, the detective, made significant progress in his investigation. He found records of a family that matched Anna's description and decided to check it out. Michael arrived at Mrs. Smith's cabin with a serious, yet hopeful expression. He brought a folder full of documents that could finally shed light on Anna's past. "Mr. Henry, I found something that might be important," Michael said, placing the folder on the table. Henry opened the folder anxiously. Inside, there were records of a family named Johnson. The description of the youngest daughter, Anna Johnson, matched exactly with the girl Henry had found in the woods. The Johnson family lived in a nearby town but mysteriously disappeared about a year ago. No one knows what happened to them, Michael explained. Henry felt a chill down his spine. The revelation was shocking, but it also brought new hopes. He decided they would need to visit the Johnsons' old house to try to find more clues. The next day, Henry, Michael, and Anna went to the Johnsons' old residence. The house was abandoned, with visible signs of decay. As they entered, Anna seemed nervous, but determined. "Here. I remember this place," she said, her voice trembling. They began to explore the house, looking for anything that could help them understand what had happened. In Anna's room, they found old toys and clothes, but nothing that indicated where her parents might be. Henry then decided to search through the house's documents. In the study, he found a diary that belonged to Anna's mother. Flipping through the pages, he found several notes about the fear Anna's mother felt towards a man named Edward, who seemed to have some sort of control over the family. "This must be the man Anna is afraid of," Henry said, showing the diary to Michael. "We need to find out who this Edward is and what his connection is to the Johnson family," Michael replied with a determined look. Meanwhile, Anna approached a portrait on the wall. It was a family photo, with her parents smiling. She began to cry, remembering happy moments before the disappearance. "I want to find my mom and dad," Anna said, tears in her eyes. Henry hugged her, feeling a deep desire to protect her and help her find her family. Michael decided to follow the lead on Edward. He discovered that Edward was a former business partner of Anna's father, involved in shady dealings. The investigation revealed that Edward had made several threats to the Johnson family, which explained the fear recorded in the diary. With this new information, Michael and Henry decided to confront Edward. They discovered he lived in a nearby town, in a large house that, ironically, reminded Henry of his own mansion's opulence. But unlike Henry's mansion, Edward's house seemed to be laden with dark secrets. On the day of the confrontation, Henry, Michael, and Anna stayed at the cabin, while Mrs. Smith took care of Anna. Henry knew he had to be careful, as Edward could be dangerous. Upon arriving at Edward's house, Michael knocked firmly on the door. A tall man with a cold gaze opened the door. It was Edward. "Can I help you?" Edward asked in a distrustful tone. "We're here to talk about the Johnson family," Michael said bluntly. Edward seemed surprised but maintained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. The Johnson family disappeared a long time ago," he responded, trying to disguise his nervousness. Henry felt the anger rising within him. He knew Edward was lying. "We know you made threats to the family, and we know that Anna, their daughter, is with us. She remembers you," Henry said, staring directly at Edward. Edward turned pale for a moment, but soon regained his composure. "That's ridiculous. You have no proof," he said with an arrogant smile. Michael, prepared for this response, took out copies of the notes from Anna's mother's diary. "We have this, and more evidence will be found if we continue investigating," Michael said firmly. Edward seemed to realize he was cornered. He backed away, visibly worried. "All right, I'll tell you what I know," he said, finally. Edward revealed that, after a severe disagreement with Anna's father, he began threatening the family. One day, in a fit of rage, he attacked the Johnson house. Anna's father was gravely injured, and, in the chaos, Anna got lost in the woods. Edward didn't know what had happened to Anna's parents after that day. Henry felt a wave of shock and sadness hearing Edward's confession. They returned to the cabin to tell Anna and Mrs. Smith what they had discovered. Anna, upon hearing the story, remained silent for a long time. Finally, she looked at Henry and said, "I want to find my parents. They are somewhere, I know it." Henry and Michael promised they would continue the search. Now, with more clues, they had hope of finally finding Anna's parents and solving the mystery once and for all. With Edward's confession, Henry and Michael had a new path to follow. They decided to search hospital and police records for the day of the attack. Michael had contacts who could help expedite the investigation process. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Anna continued attending her sessions with Dr. Richardson. The memories were becoming clearer, but also more painful. Henry and Mrs. Smith did everything they could to provide a safe and loving environment for Anna, helping her face her fears. One day, while going through the local hospital's records, Michael found something. There were records of a severely injured man admitted on the same day as the attack. His name was Richard Johnson, Anna's father. Michael rushed to the cabin with the news. "Henry, we found something." Anna's father was taken to the hospital on the day of the attack. He was severely injured but survived. Henry felt a wave of hope. Finally, they were closer to reuniting Anna with her family. They decided to visit the hospital and speak to the staff who might remember the case. At the hospital, they spoke to a nurse who had worked there for many years. She vaguely remembered Richard Johnson. "Yes, I remember him. It was a difficult case. He was in very bad shape but managed to survive. After recovery, he was taken to a rehabilitation center in another city," the nurse said. Michael and Henry followed this new lead and went to the rehabilitation center. There, they discovered that Richard had physically recovered, but was emotionally traumatized and suffering from partial amnesia. Henry approached Richard, who was sitting in a peaceful garden looking into the distance. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Henry. I know your daughter Anna. She is safe," Henry said gently. Richard looked at Henry, his eyes filled with confusion and hope. "Anna? My daughter? She's alive?" he asked, tears in his eyes. Henry nodded, feeling the emotion well up inside him. "Yes, she is alive. We're going to take you to her." On the way back to the cabin, Richard seemed anxious and emotional. When they arrived, Mrs. Smith and Anna were waiting at the door. Upon seeing her father, Anna ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy!" she cried, hugging him tightly. Richard fell to his knees, holding Anna as if he never wanted to let her go. "My dear Anna, I'm so sorry. I missed you so much," he said, sobbing. Henry and Mrs. Smith watched the scene, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Finally, Anna was reunited with her father. However, there was still a mystery to be solved. Where was Anna's mother? With the emotional reunion of Anna and her father, Henry and Michael focused on finding Anna's mother. Richard, still recovering his memories, vaguely recalled that his wife, Mary, had also been attacked and taken to an unknown location. Michael went back to the records, this time looking for any clues about Mary Johnson. He discovered that a woman named Mary had been admitted to a hospital in another city during the same period. They decided to check this lead immediately. Upon arriving at the hospital, they spoke with the director, who confirmed that Mary Johnson had been admitted, but later transferred to a specialized treatment center. She was in critical condition and needed intensive care. After initial recovery, she was taken to a specialized rehabilitation center, the director explained. Henry and Michael headed to the rehabilitation center. There, they found records of Mary and, after talking to the staff, discovered that she was alive and recovering. Henry, with his heart racing, entered the room where Mary was. She was sitting by the window looking out at the garden. She looked fragile, but there was a strong resolve in her eyes. "Mary?" Henry called gently. Mary turned, and her eyes widened with surprise and recognition. "Henry, how did you find me?" she asked, her voice weak but filled with emotion. Henry explained the whole story, from the moment he found Anna in the woods to the reunion with Richard. Mary cried upon hearing about her daughter's safety and the reunion with her husband. "I thought I would never see them again," she said, sobbing. Henry promised Mary he would take her back to her family. When they arrived at the cabin, Richard and Anna were anxiously waiting. Upon seeing Mary, Richard ran to hug her, followed by Anna. "Mary, I thought I had lost you forever," Richard said, tears in his eyes. "I'm here now, and we are together again," Mary replied, hugging her family. Mrs. Smith watched everything with a serene smile. Finally, the family was reunited. Henry felt a wave of satisfaction and joy. It had been a difficult journey, but they had made it. With the Johnson family reunited, Mrs. Smith's cabin was filled with joy and hope. Henry knew that the road ahead would still be challenging, especially with the traumas everyone had faced, but they were determined to move forward together. Richard and Mary spent the following days sharing their survival stories. Mary revealed that Edward had kidnapped and held her captive for months, trying to force her to reveal financial secrets about her husband. She had managed to escape only when a mistake by her captors gave her the opportunity. Anna was always by her parents' side, afraid of losing them again. Each day that passed, she seemed more secure and happy, returning to the joyful child she once was. As the family rebuilt their lives, Henry and Mrs. Smith continued to offer support. Henry, in particular, felt a deep connection with Anna. She had become like a daughter to him, and he was determined to protect her always. One day, while everyone was gathered at the dining table, Henry made an announcement. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. I'd like to invite you to live in my mansion. It will be more comfortable and safer for everyone," he said with a smile. Richard and Mary were surprised but warmly grateful. "Henry, you've already done so much for us. We can't accept more than this," Richard said, trying to be polite. "I insist. Consider this as a new beginning for all of us," Henry replied, determined. Finally, Richard and Mary accepted. The move to the mansion was exciting. Anna was delighted with the vast gardens and spacious rooms. Richard and Mary were grateful to have a safe place to start their lives anew. As they adapted to the new life, Henry continued his own journey of self-discovery. The experience of helping the Johnson family had changed his perspective on life and what truly mattered. He found a purpose that filled the void he had previously felt. One night, while walking through the mansion's gardens, Henry found Anna sitting on a bench, looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about, Anna?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I was thinking about how lucky I am to have found you." "Thank you for everything, Henry," Anna replied with a smile. Henry felt warmth in his heart. He took Anna's hand and said, "I am also lucky to have found you, Anna. You brought light into my life." At that moment, under the starry sky, Henry realized that true wealth was not in material possessions, but in human connections and the love they shared. He had found his true family, and with them, a new purpose and joy in life. From that day on, Henry's mansion was no longer just a large, empty house. It was a home filled with love, hope, and new memories, where each member of the Johnson family found their place, and together they began a new chapter in their lives, united and stronger than ever. And so, the story of a rich man who found a lost girl in the woods and took her to his disabled mother's house became a narrative of resilience, love, and rediscovery. The Johnson family, with Henry's help, overcame adversity and found new hope, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, the light of love and kindness can always prevail. And so, the story of a rich man who found a lost girl in the woods and took her to his disabled mother's house became a narrative of resilience, love, and rediscovery. The Johnson family, with Henry's help, overcame adversity and found new hope, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, the light of love and kindness can always prevail. And so, the story of a rich man who found a lost girl in the woods and took her to his disabled mother's house became a narrative of resilience, love, and rediscovery. The Johnson family, with Henry's help, overcame adversity and found new hope, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, the light of love and kindness can always prevail. And so, the story of a rich man who found a lost girl in the woods and took her to his disabled mother's house became a narrative of resilience, love, and rediscovery. The Johnson family, with Henry's help, overcame adversity and found new hope, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, the light of love and kindness can always prevail.